Welcome back to the Texas Health Education Service Courage Sessions. My name is Enrique Hasso, and I'm the Associate Director of the Texas Health Education Service. These Courage Sessions are sessions that help address your questions as applicants, as aspiring applicants, and future healthcare providers here through the TMDSAS office in Austin, Texas. Joining us today, we actually brought on two medical schools because early last month in March of 2021, we had the TMDSAS Match, which is the process that pairs all of our medical applicants to medical schools, and there's just a lot of movement that happens with the different lists. As a result of that, of course, with this huge influx of applications that we received this year, which is on par with what we've seen with other national application services, there are just so many more questions about the fluidity of the application process, and most importantly, rolling admissions and wait lists and all the fun stuff. So joining us here to address your questions on these, we have some guests, Belinda Gonzalez from the Long School of Medicine and Fernando Vasquez from Texas A&M University College of Medicine. So Belinda and Fernando, thank you very much for joining us today. Would you mind introducing yourselves and kind of sharing what your role is at your school?
We'll go in alphabetical order. So since I'm G, I go first, Fernando.
Ladies first.
My name's Belinda Gonzalez. I'm Director of Admissions and Special Programs with the Long School of Medicine. Excited to be here and answer your questions and take part in my first Courage session.
Nice. All right. Well, howdy, everyone, as we say in Aguilan, as we greet you to this wonderful session. My name is Fernando Vasquez. I am Director of Admissions and the Early Assurance Programs. I've been here for about 5 years, and I'm excited to get to learn about the questions you have, and hopefully we can give you some insight into the process and make this daunting process more manageable for everybody. So thank you, Enrique, for the invitation again.
Absolutely, and we're so glad to have you here because you are gold mines of information. I've worked with both of you for quite a while now. Previous to this role, when I was with JAMP, you both were also very involved with JAMP as well. So again, we're here to answer your questions. If you do have a question, I will be keeping an eye on the chat in the Facebook page for the Texas Health Education Service and for TMDSAS. So if you have a question for our group today, please share it there and we will make sure to address it today. So first off, just a quick icebreaker to verify that you are actual people. Let's talk about what your post-COVID bucket list includes. And before Belinda beats me to it, I am so excited to get back to Disney World and just eat all of the food that so that's on my list.
Right.
Mine is also Disney related, Enrique, but we've been kicking around a cruise. We've just been postponing our family. We've just been postponing it over and over with our wonderful Disney travel person. So I am excited to jump on a ship as soon as all the restrictions are lifted and just, float out to sea with Mickey and Minnie.
Here we go.
Well, I'm going to keep it domestic and stay within the state guidelines here of the COVID. But we're looking at we're a baseball family. I'm coaching again youth baseball this summer, so I'm excited about that. So we miss being at the baseball stadiums. And when I used to live in Fort Worth, we used to go to the Ranger game all the time, and they just built a brand new stadium, and we want to go see it, and of course enjoy the food, enjoy the fans, the energy. And it wouldn't hurt to have a few adult drinks while we're there. So we're looking forward to just being in the stadium with people and listening to some live, conversations about the game and watching the sport that we love.
There we go. Solid plans all around. And I think it all involves a drink here or there. So first things first, we shared some updated numbers throughout the application cycle, just how we saw the applicant pool grow significantly. In terms of TMDSAS, we actually saw a 20+ percentage point increase in application. And so what did that huge increase look like on your end at the schools?
So for long school of medicine, it was exactly the same. I think we had about 1,000 more applications submitted this year. So that's a pretty good chunk. The nice thing is that our committee that's been working with us has been doing this for many years. So they, just took it in stride really, and everybody got their initial review and their second review just as planned. And one of the things we did do, and I know many of the medical schools did, is we added additional interview dates into our season. So typically our interview season in San Antonio would end mid-December, right before the holidays. And this year we extended it into early February. So that was pretty substantial for us and for the committee to keep going.
Yep. And I would just echo similar to what the Long School of Medicine just described. Our application increase was about 21% for TMDSAS transmitted applications. Our secondary applications went up to about 30%. So we did see quite an increase in both the primary and secondary applications. And just like Belinda mentioned, we added four more interview dates to accommodate for the COVID pandemic situation. And we pretty much kept to the same procedures that we had in place. So that didn't change a whole lot, but we offered a longer interview season starting in mid-June, July, ending in early February for us. So it made it for a long season for us, but it was for the applicant to hopefully give them more opportunities to be looked at and reviewed for this cycle.
In retrospect, I think that's really what eased a lot of concerns. There's a point there last year, almost exactly around this time last year, when we were having essentially weekly meetings with all of the TMDSAS member institutions here with TMDSAS and TXHES, talking about ways that we could alleviate a lot of the time concerns that a lot of applicants had, particularly with like delayed MCAT test dates and
the application deadline.
Yeah, courses moving online, and then folks not really being able to collect their letters of evaluation, and as you said, pushing the application deadline later. So it's great to see, or great to hear, that the schools also took the initiative on their end to not just expand their interview season, but it sounds like expand the pool of interviewed applicants as well to reflect the growth that we saw.
If I can add to that statement there, I think people need to know that here in Texas, we have a unique setup where the Texas schools collaborate closely together for the benefit of the applicants, right? You would say that, Enrique, that we work closely together, not just for the benefit of the med school, but for the benefit of the applicants coming from Texas.
And I'm not just contractually obligated to say that. It's we call each other when issues happen. We congratulate each other when we're used to celebrate.
Yes.
It's just a really great collaborative environment here.
Exactly.
What I really like, though, sorry to interrupt, Enrique, is that the flexibility that all of the admissions committees have kind of just maintained throughout this process. The committees they know that opportunities have not been available to students because of the pandemic, and like you were mentioning earlier, the MCAT delays and those types of things. So everybody has just been kind of, less rigid and a lot more flexibility applied to the process.
Right. Totally agree.
We do have our first, this isn't a question, this is a comment from Ann Smith at TCOM. She says, Belinda, make sure you keep the cruise ship out of the Suez Canal.
Oh, thank you, Ann. Yes, I'll remember that.
All right, next question.
It's a tight fit there.
So with our next question, how can an applicant put forth an application that would be reviewed closely? We mentioned that there's some flexibility going on right now, but what does a quality application look like on your end?
You want to start?
You can start, Fernando.
Yeah, okay. Well, as we mentioned earlier, thanks to what you're doing there at the Texas Health Educational Service and TMDSS, we believe that there is a robust set of information for applicants nowadays compared to, say, 5-6 years ago. So We like to see applicants know the schools that they're applying to, and especially know the averages that the schools have for their incoming classes. So that's a good place to start. So say, for example, our averages were 511 and a 3.7 BCPM. Okay, so someone that is interested in applying and being competitive, you want to be near those averages just so you know that what the incoming class came with, you're near there, and you could be considered to be a strong, academically prepared applicant. So that's the first way to look at it is, do I stand up against the competition? And if you do, then that's a solid footing to start with. So someone that can demonstrate that academic success through either their coursework or the MCAT and is near those averages, because the state average here, I believe, we talked about that, Belinda, I think it's a 510 or something for the state average in Texas. So you want to know those metrics, as we call them, because that's going to help guide you as to how do I look compared to the applicant pool. Remember, the schools don't really set the bar, it's the applicant pool that does. And I think that's what people need to know, is that how do I fare? And so someone that is academically strong will be considered. And then of course, after that, we are going to start looking at activities, involvement, leadership activities, research, community service, and so on, and the motivation for this career. So we start with the initial phase. Can they do the work? Okay, looks like they can. Now let's look at what they've done to learn about the profession and any other attributes that we look for that match our mission here at A&M. At least that's how we would see a strong applicant, bringing those up front, knowing that they can succeed and do the work. Now let's see, do they fit our school?
And we talk about this all the time too, in terms of reapplicants, where we have to sometimes suggest to a reapplicant that maybe their application timeline would mean sitting out a cycle or two, because there are some things clearly that they need to improve upon. And for instance, sometimes it's coursework. And if they're looking to complete some coursework, they need to allow the timeline, within their timeline, the ability for the committee to then have this new coursework available to them to review. So they can say, oh, I'm taking all these great science courses, but if the grades aren't there for the committee to review those by the time the application deadline, and then by the time interview season comes around and we finish up with that, then it's really pointless, to have all of those great scores added to us in January or February. So we know that reapplicants oftentimes are just ready to jump in and submit a new application, but we really encourage them to try and get, like Fernando is saying, their best application. And sometimes that means just waiting a cycle, and we're not going anywhere. So it's okay. It's okay to wait a cycle.
So I think that's a key term that Belinda hit on is, are you submitting your best application? Are you putting your best foot forward? And there's a lot of people that you can go to that can say, maybe right now it's not the time. And a lot of applicants, and especially young people who want to go from college to med school, don't do that. And they make the assumption that I'm just going to see what happens, right? That's just not the approach for this process.
And I think a key player in the conversation of what a quality application looks like and making sure that you're presenting your best application, the key player here is a health professions advisor is really going to help you, A, identify how competitive you are within the overall applicant pool, and B, help you identify any areas of improvement in your application. As Belinda said, particularly for reapplicants, there are different situations under which an application may not have moved forward in the previous cycle. And so you really need to not just reflect on what that experience was that you may be needing to improve, but also building a pathway for you to actually create that best application for yourself. And a health professions advisor is the key person for you to talk to in order to get that done.
Exactly.
So we've got some weird questions that we've been seeing in our online communities, the TMDSAS Hub and the TMDSAS Non-Traditional Applicants Group. Just bizarre, just in terms of the myths that are going on out there about, opportunities for instant admission and instant rejection. So can we talk about what causes an application at your school to be immediately rejected?
No, I mean, I guess there's no like immediate rejection. You know what I mean? It's not as though so we can demystify that process, that there's not a pile with two boxes where we put yes and no. The like key take home thing for applicants is that, especially for us, and I know for many of the schools, is that our committee is always constantly like re-reviewing the applicant pool. So, the applications are coming to us from TMDSAS. Sometime one week we might get X number, and then another week we don't get as many. And so the pool, though, is constantly being revisited. So I don't think there's one like thing that we could say, oh my goodness, if you have this, you're definitely in that no box. Because and that's for that reason we don't immediately start sending out rejection notices to people, because the committee's going to go back and look at the pool as a whole and then decide we have these interview spots remaining, so let's go back and look at, maybe there's somebody we missed and we can give a second look to, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's not the approach that anybody wants to take when it comes to this process. However, I think what happens, Enrique, is that applicants self-reject themselves when they don't complete the application, they don't submit required documentation, or there's some aspects of the TMDSS that they have not completed yet. So an incomplete application to us would be an immediate rejection. So say they submit their primary, but we require a secondary, and they never submit a secondary, or they start one and do not submit, and they're asking us, I haven't heard from you. I said, well, we don't have a complete application. So now you've missed the deadline and now you are rejected. So missing items will be considered immediate, but content related items, that's a different process. So anybody that has poor or messy applications will be, for me, someone that I just don't continue to explore, or applicants that put things that are just don't make quite sense, that this could be done in such amount of time. Like there's an over exaggeration of things in there that could lead me to wonder if this person has integrity. So integrity issues to me will be deal breakers in a way in the pre-screening process. So deal breakers can be anywhere from the pre-screening, the screening, the review, and the interview process. So that could that's the continuum of the rejection process. And so I would say applicants need to do their due diligence and be thorough when they submit their application.
So for
Are you getting any examples, Enrique, of these concerns that are out there? Are there any examples?
We'll definitely get to it right after this.
Okay.
The rabbit hole runs deep. But yeah, just as a key point, if you're going to say that you interned with Dr. Fauci last year and helped develop the COVID vaccine, Fauci better be your evaluator. I'll support that.
Exactly.
That claim. So I think the big one has particularly been around, GPA issues. A lot of applicants have a rough start. Maybe they didn't have a good couple of second year of college, and then really significantly improved, but their GPA just never really kicked up. For a lot of applicants who, particularly with non-traditional students, they graduate and they're the best English major ever, but then they don't have any sciences, and so they have to go back and take sciences, so they have concerns about what their entire academic was in terms of being engaged with this career. And then the next big one that was kind of striking to me was about felonies and misdemeanors. And this is a section that we ask applicants to disclose any felonies and misdemeanors in the application. You can check out the applicant handbook to kind of identify what needs to be disclosed. But a lot of applicants think that by disclosing, it's an automatic rejection. So can you tell me what the process looks like on at the school's end to kind of assess those situations? Or even beyond felonies and misdemeanors, but also like instances of academic dishonesty or, you know, just any faults, and what that path, what the pathway to kind of redemption into this pathway would look like.
Exactly. I mean, I know you were talking at the start of this about, you know, kind of like those deal breaker things and things we're saying. And so one of the, just really quickly to point out, one of the benefits of holistic review, though, is if they're worried about a bad year or a bad semester, is that the committee can see, you know, trends in these applicants' grades. So they can see where they started to improve and did better. And maybe it didn't make that substantial difference on their GPA, but you know, if you're an applicant who's doing poorly and then you're all for one semester and you're all of a sudden able to bring it back up and really do a solid, like a really solid semester the next semester, then the committee notices that, you know, and they see, okay, this person is putting in the work, and then it's longitudinal to where they continue to put in the work thereafter. So I just wanted to touch on that really quickly. And I know Fernando's got a great answer for the disciplinary action, but in terms of, you know, felonies and misdemeanors, for us, we would prefer that they disclose it, because when ultimately, when information comes back on that criminal background check, after you've been accepted, and if there are any things that show up on that report, on that criminal background check report, that have not been disclosed in the application, then it appears to the school that you've been trying to kind of cover that up. You know, sometimes we'll hear from applicants that said, oh, well, I hired this attorney and they said they expunged it from my record. If you don't know that for 100% that it's not going to come back on your report, then you need to just go ahead and disclose it, you know, and then the committee looks at those on a case-by-case basis. Quite honestly, they'll look at those things that come back on a criminal background check, review them. Sometimes we go back to the applicant and ask for additional information, perhaps some documentation, and then it's discussed on a case-by-case basis. So Fernando, take it away on the other disciplinary.
Well, I think you pointed out that holistic review allows us to consider the entire applicant, and we know that these things can happen. Young people make mistakes, and we know that, and so no one's immune to that. So that, with that out there, we're going to consider an applicant who otherwise maybe has matured, has shown that no further incident has happened since that incident. So what we do here at A&M is that we have a separate interview and we talk about that incident to further give the applicant a chance to say, this is what really happened, this is how I feel. So we can gauge how remorseful, how genuine, and what they have done to rectify that issue that they had, whether it was a misdemeanor or hopefully not a felony, but if it was, say, an institutional action, they got caught with possession of alcohol, underage drinking or underage possession. Those are things that are going to be happening because the pressure of being at a college happens, right? So at a football game, at a social event, those things are hard to control. But what we do is give the applicant a second chance to say, tell us what happened. And so we have a separate interview. But does that prevent us from inviting them? No. Every year we see a lot of applicants who have something like that. But just be mindful that, you know, something that's severe, most med schools are going to pause and wait to see if enough time has elapsed. So for example, if I'll give you an extreme one, like say a domestic violence. I mean, that's extreme. That's something that not many people want to have as part of their cohort of students. But say that was 8-9 years ago, and the applicant, when we meet with them, says, I went through a program and I've received help and nothing else is on my record, then we know that person has, you know, rehabbed themselves. And that's the key thing here, is that we want people to rehab themselves and show that no further incidents have happened. So we're not going to discount someone right off the bat, but it's going to depend on the circumstance. All I tell to pre-meds and applicants is, if you know this is the career you want to follow, know that these things can really harm you in this process. So just be mindful that medicine, like many other careers, require that you not get arrested and do things like that. But it's not a completely deal breaker. But if someone had a severe incident, it may take a while. I remember one story when I was at TCOM. There was an applicant who had a firearm felony. Nobody touched that applicant for over 5 years because he had great metrics, he had good grades, MCAT, but because they wanted more time. I know when we read him, we said, I think we're going to pass until maybe he applies, if he wishes to, in 3 or 4 or 5 more years. And if he does, then that's something we'll say that now we have a history of no further incidents, right? So I think applicants need to be mindful that that's going to be looked at, but at the same time, we're going to give them a chance to further describe what has happened and what they've done to repair, that mistake.
I think that same kind of template applies to any part of the application, not just the felonies and misdemeanors. As Belinda mentioned, repairing GPA, you can see the trends, you can see each year, each semester's GPA, right, and how it improved over time. And I think it's really important to note that there is a pathway to getting yourself back on track in like 99.9% of cases. And so, yep, again, that health professions advisor, somebody's going to be really key in helping you build that pathway and also make sure that you're on track, because they're the ones, we have health professions advisors that call, text, Fernando and Belinda, and we're like very, the member institutions of TMDSAS are really well connected, but we're also well connected with all the health professions advisors here in Texas as well. And so just know that there's a pathway, and we just need to find the best one for you.
Yeah, I would add to that, connect your pathway with the timeline, so because you can find a path, but you have to accept the timeline that it's going to take to get there. And a lot of rehabs or other people that we talk to, they just don't want to accept that timeline. That I have to wait 2 years, or like Belinda was saying, it might take a couple of years to get there, and it's hard for them to hear that, because most people want it like the next day, right? So I think pathway and timeline needs to be in the same breath.
Yeah, and I think the same applies for repeated incidents. If you have 1 bad semester, that's all right if you fix it. If you have 2 bad semesters, it might still be all right. 3 bad semesters. If you have 4 bad years, that's just a long-term trend. And so, this applies in multiple directions. And I think that's a great segue into, we've talked about all the quote unquote deal breakers that we've had, but now let's talk about the complete other flip side. Let's say I got a 528 on my MCAT and I have a 4.0 GPA, 4.0 BCPM GPA. Am I automatically going to get an interview and accepted?
Yes. No. Just kidding.
I knew Long School of Medicine did it that way. Yes.
Totally kidding. No, this is where we talk again about the holistic review and all of the other things that the admissions committee is looking at. And so we really drive home, the AAMC uses these metrics, experiences, and attributes, that kind of 3-legged stool, where we want to see all of those areas have kind of that you've made an effort as an applicant to succeed in all of those areas. So if you've got the MCAT and the GPA, great, but we also want to see that you have some knowledge of what you're getting into, that you enjoy. And so that would be either healthcare experience, some shadowing, that kind of thing. And then what's really big is also that you enjoy being of service to others, and that, you know that this is a service-oriented career, and that you're able to demonstrate to us that you really invest yourself in opportunities where you can be of service to your community. So looking at all those things, and then, that you can string 2 sentences together really well in an essay is also important. Like Fernando was saying, that you don't submit your personal statement with 2 sentences. All of those things are important as well. So so looking at all of the medical schools websites and the things that they put out there to say that these are important to our school, because every school is different, right? And so, but we all do a great job of putting out information of things that we're looking for in our applications.
Yeah, what I would add about metrics, it's not all about metrics. This, I think for 2019 or 18, I can't remember, WMC put out some data, because they put out a lot of data. And they said that 11% of applicants with those metrics that you just mentioned did not receive one medical school offer. So that tells you that, like Belinda described nicely here, is that there's much more to the metric process. I think you will stand out if you have those metrics. Will be, whoa, that's impressive, right? That's hard to do, to have a 100 percentile, 98 percentile MCAT and a perfect 4.0 GPA. Not everyone has that, but it tells you that 11% of those in that category did not receive an offer of admissions. So that tells you that schools are looking at other things, attributes and characteristics, and experiences. So you can have that. And then I look at your application and you've done 20 hours of community service in 4 years. Okay, that's just not acceptable for our school when one of our core values here is selfless service. So that's not going to go well for you. Or you did 40 hours of healthcare, and then when you write your essay, it just doesn't really connect to the experience. So the content after the metrics are going to be just as important in the holistic review process as Belinda mentioned. It's something that a lot of us are utilize as our review process. So someone like that will initially stand out because of that, because anyone would want to know, well, what does this applicant come with, right? And it just tells you that we are looking from the low end to the high end, and we're looking for the same things, whether you're on the high end or the low end.
Enrique, you're probably seeing questions, just out there. We're getting them a lot too, of people saying, but these opportunities aren't as widespread right now because of the pandemic. So, I've tried to get locked in with a physician to shadow, and I've tried to do this, and we understand that. So, it goes back to that flexibility that we were talking about. It's going to be really difficult for someone who was waiting until this year to try and do it all, right? So hopefully they've started doing this back in freshman and sophomore year and trying to get those experiences. But then we've just seen so many creative ways that applicants have been within this last cycle. So it's really remarkable how people can just get creative and, tutor someone down the street that they know their parents are homeschooling. Hello, I have difficult with 5th grade math with my 5th grader. So like, I would gladly set up a Zoom with my child if for, somebody who's willing to tutor for free, that kind of thing. We saw after the big snowstorm in Texas, how the food banks were really struggling and needed volunteers. People were needing volunteers with their plumbing work and that kind of thing. And so I think there are so many ways you can still step up and get involved and be a part of your community, even if there aren't as many of these typical opportunities that students were used to having, right?
Yeah, we actually talked about this in several Courage sessions, namely the first Courage session that we did with Dr. Judy-Ann Calloway from the Long School of Medicine. What foresight she had, because that session was about this time last year. And she was talking exactly about that there are opportunities in your community to engage with others, depending on your level of comfort, whether you are willing to go to a grocery store for a neighbor, whether you want to do virtual tutoring for your local school. There's so many great opportunities. And then 2 weeks ago, we had a courage session with a group of advisors who also shared the same thing. But essentially, you know, we're looking at the light at the end of the tunnel, but we're still very much living in a pandemic experience. And I can almost guarantee you that both Fernando and Belinda have added, what did you do during COVID to stay engaged with this pathway as one of their interview questions.
And another thing that we added to that, Enrique, besides what have you done, how has COVID impacted you? You know, I think that's important for us to know. What areas of your life or your family members were impacted, or did you have a family member that was impacted by COVID or had COVID? You know, so one of our prompts in our secondary is, what has the pandemic done to affect these categories: education, career, work, and health, and things like that. So because we want to know about the hardships that you've had, and you'll be surprised, Enrique, we get a lot of applicants who write not applicable to that. It's hard to believe, right, that all of us, no matter who you are, I think you've been affected or impacted, and to say it doesn't apply to you, it's really amazing. I guess that's just my personal point of view, but we are asking applicants to tell us, what did you go through? Because we want to know and be more conscious about it and more compassionate about it, versus, well, I didn't do anything because there was nothing for me to do. And then we read in your secondary, well, you were taking care of your loved one who became ill, or they lost their job, so you had to take a job. And think that those are things that are important for us to know during this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we could shift gears now from the review process, we've talked about your kind of timelines in terms of when applications start being reviewed, and we've talked about what it looks like when you receive applications on your campus. So if we could answer I want to say the $100,000 question here, but definitely high up there. We always tell applicants to submit an application early. Just about every admissions dean that we had on the courage session said apply early. When is apply early?
Yeah, that's a common question that we get. When we did all those health professions fairs virtually last month or so, that was one of the big questions that we received. And we know, saying apply early, like you're saying, what defines that early time period? We start interviews typically early August, and we continue. When they were in person, we were always doing them early August, and we continued that last cycle for the 2021 entering class by doing them in early August as well. So for me, I would define early as someone who is in that first batch / pool of people to get invited for the very first set of interviews, that first month of interviews. But what we really want applicants to remember is that every school has extended their interview process, right? And so there are multiple opportunities to be invited. Even if you submit your application on that final day that TMDSAS allows, and then it gets processed and sent to the schools, those applicants do get looked at. So there is a possibility that you could be invited for an interview date. Now, you missed out clearly on the August, through October interview dates, but fortunately for them, we're still going, and we still know that those applications are coming. The committee still knows that there's more to review. I mean, they do ask, like, oh my gosh, when is this over? And how many more are we getting? But TMDSAS does a great job of telling us, we've got 500 more, 800 more, whatever that number is. So we're able to communicate that to the committee and come up with a plan on how to get those last ones evaluated and reviewed. So, I know Fernando's going to talk about having like your best application as well, because you don't want to rush it just to get it in. So there's that to consider. But for us, I would just keep in mind that how much longer the interview process is going right now. And we know for sure it's going to be that same way for the 2022 entering class. So keep that in mind. The TMDSAS is keeping their extended deadline as well. And so there is still plenty of time, but don't procrastinate. for sure. Do not procrastinate and be like, if you have it ready to go in July, August, then just do it. Don't wait until that last final week.
If I could interject real quick, just working backwards from having the application at the Long School of Medicine admissions committee table by early August, TMDSAS application takes 2 to 4 weeks to process. So that puts us at early July. You can submit your TMDSAS application without test scores or letters of evaluation, and we don't ask for transcripts until later in the cycle. So really what that application is going in, filling out the questions, entering the essays, and hitting submit. On top of that, Long School of Medicine requires the CASPER, and several other schools require CASPER as well. With Texas A&M, and with several other schools, there are secondary applications. Those require sometimes for the school to review those and then extend an invitation for you to complete those. For Texas A&M, the secondary application is already available. I'm totally stepping on your toes. I'm sorry.
That's fine. You got me covered. Thank you.
Yeah, but we're putting the timeline for you to hit submit probably around early July. So I typically say to applicants to hit submit by the 4th of July, so that by early August, your application's already transmitted to the schools and they can start taking a look at that. Now, keep in mind, letters of evaluation can take a couple of weeks at TMDSAS to be processed and transmitted to the schools. Some schools will not extend interviews without those letters. MCAT scores, test scores are required for you to be invited to an interview. So make sure that you have those submitted. So that means that you have to have taken your MCAT by early July in order to be part of that first batch. So there are just so many different things that are kind of running simultaneously. But just keep in mind, late June, early July, that's part of the apply early batch.
And I think if I can,
you could hit submit on the last day of the application, and it will still be reviewed by the schools.
Yeah, if I could add to that concept of applying early, which is in theory, it's a great concept, because you would think I'm going to be looked at possibly, but as Enrique, you mentioned, that's one element. There's the completion. So what you're striving for is to have a completed application as early as possible, not just submitting the primary as early as possible. Because say, for example, I gave you an earlier example where an applicant submitted May 15th. Great, the primary, it was transmitted. But guess when they submitted their secondary? 3 months later. That application sat there and others were stacked up above them because we do it chronologically. So even though you submitted May 15, your new date now will be August 15. And by that time, you have 600 other applicants who've moved ahead of you because they have a complete CASPER score, letters of recommendations. So I think the goal is to submit a completed application for whatever school you're applying to. In schools that have secondaries, I know we're not going to look at anyone until we have a complete, in our system,